hour, in a couple of states, ballots will close in parts of those states here. So it's going to move very, very fast. And I'll be looking for voter enthusiasm, same-day voter turnout, how that tracks with some of the record-breaking early voting numbers we've seen in some of these battleground states as well. So there's a lot of things to watch for tonight, Stephanie.
Yeah, and I just put up our map of the 7 swing states. You mentioned those battleground states. These are, of course, as you know, these are the key states that everyone is going to be keeping a very close eye on, and I know you're going to be giving those results.
And it's not only those 7 of this hour, and independent voters as well. So you're going to have an eye into some of these polling locations, outside of some of these polling locations, and of course, breaking news pops up on election nights as well, depending on how the ballot counting is going. And so there's a lot of storylines to follow. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. We got a lot in store at the top of the next hour.
No, absolutely. And we ourselves are going to step away for that 2-minute break as we hand it over to you, Andrew, and the entire Live Now from Fox team as Election Day primetime coverage starts in just a number of minutes. We're going to pivot to you. We're going to step away for that 2-minute break. Stay with us, everyone.
Just music. Yeah, that's the idea. Welcome to the live. We're gonna be live whole night till election result or till the battery burn out. Welcome to the live.
And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. Live Now look there at the White House in the nation's capital. This is the moment we have all been waiting for all year, and that is the prize of the night. Some would say it's the Super Bowl of politics. Welcome here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. I'll be guiding you through these results tonight in real time when we get them as well. Polls are about to close in just a couple of states and part of a couple of states. So we'll get some of those results coming in momentarily at the top of the hour. And let's talk about the presidential contest. According to some of these national head-to-head polls here, the race is very close between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris here. Voter enthusiasm, of course, and early voting turnout have remained high over the last couple of weeks here. We'll see if that remains the case for some of these same-day voters in these 7 battleground states we'll be watching throughout the course of the evening as well here. But we are live, raw, and unfiltered. That is what we do here on Live Now from Fox. We're going to be bringing you these campaign rallies, campaign events, press conferences from election officials in states around the country as well here, just like we have been doing all throughout the course of the election cycle here. So right now, we do want to show you what we are watching at the moment here. Take a look at this. This is inside, we believe there, the Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach. We also have a live look as well at Howard University outside the nation's capital at the Harris Watch Party. So these are all set, these events there. We're going all night. We're not stopping. It'll be live, raw, and unfiltered, of course. You'll be hearing the candidates from all across the country, whether they win or lose as well. Now, the question on everyone's minds is whether there will be a declared winner tonight. Of course, we can't answer that question right now. Each state has their own rules when it comes to counting ballots. But remember, just to set the stage, we are going to be relying here on Live Now from Fox with the Associated Press. All of their data, all of their numbers and metrics, that is who we will rely on here to bring you these results accurately in real time. Now, if you notice in the bottom left hand of your screen there, that is our Electoral College tally, and it will update in real time when these states get called. Now, below that, you see another number there. Right now, it's at 510,500. That means that is showing how many people are streaming live now from Fox at this very moment here. So just a really interesting, cool feature to let you know how many people are watching alongside with us and with you here. Now, and remember, it all comes down to that magic number in the presidential contest, 270. These battleground states will decide the election here. Let's bring into the conversation, though, some of my colleagues who will help us make sense of this night as well, including Live Now's Austin Westfall and Christina Evans. Austin, let's start with you. You're going to be our guy at the board there. You're going to have some maps. You're going to help us make sense of some of these results. And Austin, it's not just the path to 270. It's the balance of power in Washington on Capitol Hill.
That's right. The top prize tonight, of course, Andrew, it's going to be this building right here. We do want to show you how we're going to illustrate these results as they come in through the Associated Press as the night progresses. You see a lot of gray on this map right now. This is going to start filling in with some red on this side as the night progresses. We're going to start seeing some blue on this side as the night progresses. We're going to be tracking results in all 50 states, of course, but the campaigns have really been focusing on 7 battlegrounds: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. So, what's the easiest path to victory for both candidates? Let's start with Harris. She's just got to get those blue wall states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and then 1 in Nebraska. That gives her the presidency if all of the other 43 states and Washington, D.C. fall the way that we expect them to. How about Trump's path? Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. That's all it's going to take. Those are the easiest paths for both candidates. Of course, like you mentioned, though, that's not going to be the only story. We're going to be tracking the balance of power in both chambers of Congress as well. This is going to be pivotal. We also got maps to show you for the Senate and the House. This is how we're breaking down the Senate. We just want to illustrate here that all these darker colored pips, these are seats that are not up for grabs. Everything in the center, these are the seats where we're seeing challenges. As you can see, many more blue seats on the defense compared to red. Democrats have a slim majority in the Senate right now, 51 to 49. It's pretty much all but guaranteed at this point that West Virginia, Senator Joe Manchin, who's not running for re-election, his seat is going to flip independent to red. Jim Justice, the popular 2-term governor in West Virginia, likely going to be flipping that seat. So that is already going to be one seat that the Democrats are going to be losing. There's a number of other competitive Senate seats: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Those are pretty much seats the Democrats are going to need to win if they want to maintain their control. There's also some seats where the Republicans could be on the defense. There's been a lot of chatter about whether or not Colin Allred can actually outpace Ted Cruz in Texas. There's an interesting race in Florida with Rick Scott. And then an independent challenger coming out of nowhere, giving us an unexpected challenge in a state that nobody expected a senatorial challenge to happen. So that's what we're tracking in the Senate. Finally, before we go, Andrew, let's talk about the House here. Again, a lot of gray. 218. That's going to be the magic number. This map is much more complex. We're starting to see every single district. There's competitive districts from as far east as Maine to as far west as Alaska. So many competitive races on the West Coast, including in southwestern Washington, Bend, Oregon, the Central Valley in California, Southern California. Those are House races that could determine the balance of the House, and those are races that may not be called for a long time. So I say all that to say, Andrew, that this building is important tonight because it's going to let us know just how powerful of a president we're going to be talking about.
You know, that's so true, Austin, depending on who wins the presidency tonight. You know, will they have a unified government on Capitol Hill or a divided government on Capitol Hill? You know, will Chuck Schumer in the Senate keep his job? Will Speaker Johnson on the House side keep his job? All of those questions remain outstanding right now. Austin, thanks so much. If it's election night, you do need a map. You got a map, and we'll check in very soon here. In the meantime, though, so many of these storylines will be happening on social media, particularly. We're going to get a lot of our news there, because even on election night, breaking news will happen live, raw, and unfiltered, as it usually does. And to join us to track all things on social media, my colleague there in the Live Now newsroom, Christina Evans. And Christina, what are you watching for tonight on social media?
Yeah, Andrew, it's great to be here with you guys on election. All of our boards in here pulling in these posts from X as well as Instagram and TikTok as things are starting to break on the internet. And when it comes to some of those storylines, an example of one that we're going to be following right now, I want to show you here on your screen a look at the story that's now coming out of Milwaukee. So this is some breaking news that we did just get into our newsroom as well. The city of Milwaukee says that they will recount around 30,000 absentee ballots after discovering each of the 13 high-speed tabulators here at Central Count had an open door. Right now, officials aren't sure of how that happened. They will zero out those machines and start again. Now, this is according to our news partners there at Fox 6 in Milwaukee. But again, another important storyline that we're covering there in Milwaukee. So what we have learned is that the city spokesperson, Jeff Fleming, said that those tabulators were sealed, but the doors to those machines were not properly closed. This issue, though, involved early absentee and in-person ballots and has affected all 13 tabulators. Live look that we have there in the city of Milwaukee as we're continuing to follow some of these breaking stories. That's just an example of some of those storylines that we're going to be following here on social media. Again, as you're stepping away from the TV, maybe you need to go pick up your kids from school or run a quick errand to the grocery store. Pick up your dinner tonight. Make sure you have your phone with you. You can follow us at Live Now Fox. I'm going to push our TikTok platform right now because we'll be there very active giving you those latest updates. So, Andrew, sending it back over there to you. But again, you can find us on Live Now socials as well throughout the night.
All right, Christina Evans, thanks so much. You're going to be very busy. We'll be checking in with you periodically here, Christina. Thanks. All right, in the meantime here, we are well underway now in our election night coverage, and we're into the top of the hour. And a few states, not a lot, I believe about two, some parts of those states, polls have closed there. I'm talking about Indiana, I'm talking about Kentucky. So we will get some of those results in momentarily here, of course. At the top of the next hour, some of these major battleground states, polls will close there. North Carolina and Georgia, will have our eyes on that as well. Let's just give you a sense of what we're watching for right now. We have all of these live pictures, and that's what we do here, of course. You see there inside of the Trump campaign watch party as well, and that's in West Palm Beach, where this will all unfold tonight. Now, for the other campaign, the Harris campaign, this is at Howard University outside the nation's capital. Of course, you know, Vice President Harris is an alum of Howard University, a historically black college and university, and that is where she has chosen to host her campaign election night watch party and rally here. So we also have some of these vantage points coming to us from polling locations. We just brought you that news out of Milwaukee there. So some snafus and flare-ups. But let's take our first commercial break of this hour. We'll be back in just a moment.
Look at the size of that. Welcome bonus of 150. Yes, we do.
Next time, see if you can manage to get us some money.
Really important, which is this. There are ballot measures going on throughout the United States tonight. These are special amendments, usually to state constitutions, and the most hotly watched and contested ones of all are with regards to abortion. Of course, since Roe v. Wade was overturned back in 2022, that is the constitutional right to an abortion, lots of states, including Florida, including Iowa, including Arizona, have reverted to an abortion ban or a near total abortion ban. Florida, for example, has a 6-week abortion ban, having previously had some of the most liberal abortion laws anywhere in the South. There is a ballot initiative on the ballot in Florida today that for a constitutional right to an abortion. There is a 60% necessary threshold in order to pass it, but the Democrats are hoping that in key places like Florida, and in particular in a state like Arizona, that could help drive turnout, drive women to the polls for the Kamala Harris coalition. So it all, in the end, relates back to the presidency, but there is a lot more than just the presidency at stake tonight, Elba.
Lewis, thank you so much, and no doubt we will continue to hear from Lewis throughout the night as we start to get some of those results. Well, we're live right across the country tonight. We're with the Harris and Trump camps, and we're in some of the battleground states that will decide this election. James Matthews is in Florida with Team Trump, and our Martha Kellner is here in Washington with Kamala Harris. Dominic Waghorn is in Pennsylvania, where, as we've been saying, there are 19 electoral votes up for grabs. Cordelia Lynch is in Georgia with 16 electoral votes. Michigan has 16 electoral votes, and we've got Yusra Al-Bagir there. And Shigi Mararike is in Arizona, where there are 11 electoral college votes up for grabs. Let's go straight to James, who is in Florida for us. And James, as I was saying, you're with Team Trump. We saw Donald Trump and the former First Lady a little earlier. They were out, putting their vote through, very close to where you are and where their home is.
Hi, Alba. Yeah, Donald Trump out today voting. Amusingly said he wouldn't tell us who he had voted for. I thought, Yalda, there's been much commentary about Donald Trump tiring towards the end of the campaign. I wouldn't say I disagree with that. I thought he looked tired today. He is 78, of course, and has been hitting it hard through the swing states. 4 rally stops yesterday alone. But yeah, in the company of his wife, Melania, he said, he was asked, does he have any regrets about the way his campaign went? You always have regrets, he said, but couldn't think of any at the time. He said he would concede the election if it was free and fair, entirely in keeping with his narrative throughout, qualifying that by the statement that he's not saying it is going to be free and fair, or backing the notion of integrity. And let me tell you this, Yalda, in the past hour or so, he's been on Truth Social as he sits in Mar-a-Lago. He said this about 45 minutes ago. Lots of talk about massive cheating in Philadelphia, law enforcement coming. 15 minutes ago, he tweeted this: Philadelphia and Detroit, heavy law enforcement is there. Now, Philadelphia City Commissioner, he himself has posted on social media that there's absolutely no truth in that. But I do wonder, are we seeing Donald Trump writing a draft, his draft, of what he would see as the story of the night? Certainly if he loses. That plan to undermine the integrity, to question the authority of the electoral process and go to the courts and challenge it, an outcome that he doesn't like. Interestingly, in Mar-a-Lago, he's in the company of Nigel Farage, by the way. He's been tweeting from the back of a cab on his way to Trump's private residence, but also by Trump's side will be Elon Musk. And on this of all nights, when there will be uncertainty, questions as the results come in, he's in the company of an individual who, of course, controls X, and many people will be consuming their knowledge of the election, having their thoughts shaped about outcomes, about integrity, by that very platform. So interesting in terms of the personnel and how it will play out overnight. Briefly, I'm in the convention centre. We're quite close to Mar-a-Lago, a couple of miles down the road. This is a huge place, huge media presence. Trump supporters with their MAGA red hats starting to gather, several hundred of them. We expect to hear from Donald Trump at some point during the night on stage. So I suppose then we'll get a very clear sense of how he sees the shape of things. Remember when he did the same thing in 2020? He went on stage and said, I have won the election, declared victory, despite the fact that the results were still coming in. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely, James. How could we forget that moment? Thank you so much for bringing us up to date, and we will be talking to James throughout the evening.
Sorry about the sky picture. It's not very clear.
Here in Washington with Team
Hopefully we'll clear up in a few minutes.
Give a sense of what the mood is like there. I'm hearing that they're anxious, they're nervous, but they're also quite excited, and this is a huge day for both camps.
Yeah, Team Harris nervously looking at that exit poll data for any clues as to how this election is going to augur for her. I am at Howard University, not far from where you are, about 10 minutes drive from the White House. It's one of America's largest historically black colleges, and it's Kamala Harris's election night HQ. It's also her alma mater. She graduated from here in 1986 with a politics and economics degree, and her team hope that over the next few days she can stand on that stage, returning here as America's first female president. But just to give you a sense of the scale of the challenge for her in collecting enough votes to do that, I was here at Howard University last week speaking to students. This is a centre for black excellence. It's somewhere where she should be able to rely on fairly steadfast support, but some of those students were saying they've not been convinced, they've not heard enough from her, she's not made her case for being president forcefully enough to them, and they said they weren't sure which way they were going to vote or if they were going to vote at all. One student was also mentioning how close Kamala Harris is to President Biden and the Biden administration and their handling of the war in Gaza and President Biden's backing of Israel. They're upset with her for that. They weren't sure whether they could vote for her for that reason. I'm sure another thing that Team Harris will be looking at from that exit poll data is how big an issue abortion is for voters, particularly young voters. Harris has been courting Gen Z vote in a major way over the past 3 months, and we know that younger voters are very motivated by the battle for reproductive rights. It's why we've seen Kamala Harris on stage over the past few weeks with women telling their own abortion stories. And these are not women who have elected to have abortions for financial reasons, for lifestyle reasons, or the myriad other reasons that women have abortion. These are women who have wanted pregnancies, who then experience serious medical problems but are unable to get abortions in their home state, and then have these harrowing stories. I've heard them firsthand, where they've had to travel across state lines, sometimes hundreds of miles, to receive abortion care. The Harris team hope that those stories have resonated enough in swing states with those really crucial voters that it can help her get across the line.
Martha Kellner there. Well, we're joined now in the studio by Ambassador John Bolton, who was National Security Advisor in the Trump White House. We've got quite a gathering of former Trump employees, but good evening and thanks for being with us. I just wonder, first of all, did you ever think Trump would get this close to a second term?
I didn't. He shouldn't have, and I think it's a responsibility of the Republican Party and a lot of people in it who brought him back from the political dead. And if he's elected, it's another price we're going to pay for the damage he does to us in a second term.
Do you see more trouble if he loses or loses closely?
Look, I think his script is already written. I predict instead of waiting until 2 or 3 in the morning, he'll come on at 9 or 10 East Coast time tonight and say the election's being stolen from us, just to lay the groundwork. He made a mistake by waiting too long in 2020. Just let's all get this straight. There are winners and losers in the world. Donald Trump is a winner, therefore he can't lose. Therefore, if he is losing, it was stolen. That's how it works.
Ambassador, your relationship and how volatile it has been with
You're
Donald
going to
Trump.
play the most recent quotes again, aren't you?
I am. Actually, I'm going to ask you about his recent tweet that he put out about you, and he was very, he insulted you, but one of the things he said was that whenever he took you into a room, it would frighten the likes of Vladimir Putin. It would frighten Kim Jong-un because they thought that you were frankly going to attack them, and it worked for him. But he did say some nasty things about you. He also said that every time you'd see a $15 drone, you'd want to shoot it out of the sky and cause all sorts of wars.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to find a guy who hired Bolton and get rid of him. This is classic Donald Trump. It's a juvenile approach, and it's not just me. He does it to anybody who crosses him, and it's one of the reasons he's really not fit to be president. He doesn't understand issues, so he turns things into personal attacks. And in the kind of politics we have in the United States today, that kind of divisiveness is, I think, very harmful.
What about some of those issues? And he talks about Ukraine and sorting it out in 24 hours. And how does that actually happen in the real world?
Well, it won't. But I think it's a mark of how much trouble Ukraine is in if Trump wins. I think that his natural affinity for Putin, whom he thinks he has a good relationship with, will work against Ukraine. In fact, I think it's Putin who believes that Trump is an easy mark and is prepared to take advantage of it in Ukraine and in other cases as well.
I was with Kevin Rudd last night, former Prime Minister of Australia, now the ambassador here for Australia. He said that China, and he has a working relationship with the Chinese, are more concerned about a second Trump presidency because, frankly, they can't deal with unpredictability, and they'd rather see a Harris in the White House.
I don't think that's right. I think Xi Jinping also thinks Trump is an easy mark. And my prediction is this: if Trump wins, the day after the election, Xi will call him up and he'll say, Donald, I'm so glad you won. That guy Biden messed everything up. We've now got so many problems. Let's you and I get together. We can fix them. Let's negotiate the biggest trade deal in history, which is what we were trying to do before. Trump will be on his way to China. I will tell you a quick story. When we were with Prime Minister May in 2018, she had us out to Checkers, and we had a conversation at a lunch with the president, his aides, and Prime Minister and her aides. And Trump was telling her about his trip to China in 2017, and he said, the Chinese gave me the biggest welcome they have ever given anybody in all history.
And yet the Trump administration's policies on China were far tougher than the Obama administration's policies.
Over him kicking and screaming in many respects. He sees the relationship as fundamentally a trade relationship, and if you could get that biggest trade deal in history,
massive tariffs on China.
well, he believes that China cost him the election in 2020. Of course, he didn't lose the election, but if he had lost the election, it would have been because of the COVID virus coming out of China.
Let's switch
And
back
he
to
thinks they're
Sky.
responsible for it, and that's one reason he's very tough. But I guarantee you, the prospect
Let's
of
switch back
negotiating a huge deal,
to
if he
Fox.
puts it on the table, will be
Yes,
irresistible.
go to Fox.
Ambassador, I'm keen to know whether of America's other adversaries, who you think they would prefer to win. I mean, the Russians would prefer Trump to win, presumably because of what would happen in Ukraine.
Right, I think that's probably right. I think Iran has a somewhat different view of Trump.
Iran, I was going to come to. They would prefer Harris.
That's right. But I think the main effort by all of our adversaries, the interference they're currently undertaking in our election, while it may be designed to help particular candidates, is really designed to undermine Americans' faith in the legitimacy of our institutions.
Fox is clear.
I asked my granddad if God was real. He said that I know the answer. So can you?
I like it. It's mine. The prices blow my mind. I feel so rich. I feel like a billionaire.
Over 47% advantage, a 4-point advantage over Harris so far. So those are some of the numbers that we're seeing at the county level in the presidential race. Let's pull up the House once again, because we're starting to see a little bit more shading coming in some of these races. Again, none of these are expected to be bellwethers, Andrew, but we're just starting to see that some of these counties that we expect to be red are starting to either be filled in with solid red, because those are uncontested races that were called immediately, or they are leaning red in some of these unsurprisingly red counties.
Sure.
Andrew.
Yeah, and Austin, of course, we mentioned the gubernatorial contest there in Indiana, in the Hoosier State. I mentioned Mike Braun. Remember, he's currently the Republican senator from Indiana. He wanted to do and try his hand at the governor's mansion there. We're getting results in around 4% of estimated votes counted for the governor's race in Indiana. Braun at 58%, his Democratic challenger, Jennifer McCormick, at 39% right now. Braun with a pretty sizable margin over McCormick. It's still early, though. But interesting, this opened up a seat kind of in the Senate for Republicans in Indiana, though Jim Banks, he tried his hand at Senate politics, and it's seemingly going well for him tonight as well. Austin.
And again, I'm pulling up Allen County behind me here. This is where Fort Wayne is, Andrew, just to illustrate some of what we're seeing in these bigger counties. So far, this is where the majority of the votes have come in. 36,000 for Braun, 34,000 for McCormick. But that's only 5% of the votes tallied so far. There's not too many competitive governor races so far in this cycle. In fact, the only competitive one that we expect, and by the way, I should introduce our map of all the governor's races around the country. We are, of course, following North Carolina closely. That's an interesting one with Mark Robinson. We do want to bring you results as soon as polls close in North Carolina. That'll be an interesting one to watch for. The real only competitive governorship that's happening this cycle is going to be in New Hampshire. We're going to be following those results closely. That red that you see in Indiana behind me, not a shocker.
All right, Austin, thanks so much. In the meantime here, we are anticipating some type of press conference there out of Philadelphia. We don't know entirely when that's going to begin, but I want to tell you why this is happening. This is what precipitated it earlier this afternoon. Donald Trump there posting on Truth Social, saying a lot of talk about massive cheating in Philadelphia. He says law enforcement coming. Now, Philadelphia election officials and the district attorney in Philly, Larry Krasner, are weighing in on this. Krasner says this: my response to Trump's unfounded allegation of cheating in Philly's general election. He says the only talk about massive cheating has come from one of the candidates, Donald J. Trump. He says there's no factual basis whatsoever within law enforcement to support this wild allegation there from Krasner. Going on on to say, we have invited complaints and allegations of improprieties all day. If Donald J. Trump has any facts to support his wild allegations, we want them now, right now. We are not holding our breath here. So, want to just make sure we got that in. We are waiting for this press conference to begin there in Philly. In the meantime here, let's bring to the conversation yet another one of these guests, experts, analysts who will be joining us throughout the course of the evening to help us make sense of some of these storylines. Our friend, though, as well, former Biden campaign advisor, and that's Rhett Buttle. He joins me. Rhett, I wanted to ask, too, and thanks for being with us. Happy election night. Rhett, just your response and reaction to what we just brought our viewers happening in Philadelphia here. Do you think that's somewhat of a bellwether of how the night's going to go as far as rhetoric, as far as messaging?
Well, I hope so, but I think, we are expecting that, President Trump will, as he has always done, put out potentially incorrect things that are happening. But at this stage of the game, it's really important to know that this has been a very safe and accessible election. Everyone's votes have been very secure. America has the most safe and secure election system in the world. We saw that last cycle. And in previous cycles where the Trump administration had brought forward allegations of fraud, all of those, the vast majority of them, were struck down by independent judges. So we may continue to see some of this rhetoric. I don't think that it's helpful right now. We need to make sure that as polls are open, people continue to get to the polls. The most important thing is that people be able to know that their vote is safe and secure and it's accessible to everyone.
So, Red, I want to talk about the Harris campaign and where the Harris campaign stands right now. Last night on CNN, a senior Harris campaign advisor, David Plouffe, said this to Aaron Burnett, that he believes they can win all 7 battlegrounds. He says they can, not that they will. He believes that, though. Is that feasible right now? Why is this race so close between Harris and Trump?
Well, look, we always knew that this would be a close election. That has been heavily predicted. The polls have been very close. But the vice president has said over and over she is asking for every American's vote, and she's leaving no stone unturned. Yesterday, she was, crossing across Pennsylvania from the top of the bottom of the state, talking to voters about her plan to lower cost and what she'll do as president of the United States to bring, down the cost of groceries, to make the cost of housing more affordable. And I think that that is a message that is really resonating, not just in Pennsylvania, but in places like Nevada, in Wisconsin. And so, I think the campaign is really focused on bringing the message to working families about how they're going to make their lives better. And I think that that's why you heard David Plouffe talk about last night. All of these states are within the realm of possible.
So I want to talk also, though, about this narrative that has been front and center throughout the course of the campaign cycle. How Harris has had to redefine herself, especially in relation to President Joe Biden. Joe Biden withdrew from the ticket in July, and Harris allegedly, you can argue, charted her own course or did not chart her own course. Do you see any Biden drag in some of these early exit polls right now? That has been a key feature, how she would distinguish herself from Biden. We know this race is going to be decided among independents and among some of these late-breaking undecided voters. Has she done a good enough job of distinguishing herself from Biden?
Well, look, I think the vice president is very proud of the things that she accomplished as part of the Biden-Harris administration, which are mostly bipartisan things. The bipartisan infrastructure law, the bipartisan Chips and Sciences Act, all of those are investments in Americans, working families, things like roads and bridges that create jobs. But the vice president has also really talked about what is important to her, right? And so she's put plans together focused on working families and small businesses. She's made access to capital and tax credits for small employers and Main Street the hallmark of her campaign. She's focused on bringing down the cost of housing and groceries for families. Those are things that are plans and that are really unique to the vice president, I think are really identifying. And I also just think, she's been very focused on building a broad coalition. So in addition to really working to, talk to the African-American community, the youth vote community, we're really encouraged by the numbers we're seeing out of Pennsylvania with the Puerto Rican community, for example, and young voters, on college campus coming out to support the vice president. I think all of that is a really unique sign to the strength of the coalition that the vice president brings to this conversation.
So, Red, I got to ask also, because issues are front and center in this campaign, including reproductive rights and abortion here. Is the Dobbs decision from 2 years ago, is that fading or is that ramping up amongst the base of the Democratic Party here? Will we see any effect, especially amongst this key voting demographic, that's suburban women and young women here? It seems like the Harris campaign has put a lot of their eggs into that voting constituency here. Will it matter?
Look, Dobbs is very important, and a woman's right to choose is a key part of this campaign. The vice president has been clear, but there's a broader narrative here, right? This is about freedom. Do you want a candidate that supports freedom? If so, you want to support Kamala Harris. Do you want a candidate that will take us forward and continue to grow the economy? If so, you want Kamala Harris. Do you want a candidate who's more focused on bringing the country together, reaching across the aisle with people like Liz Cheney, for example? Then you want Kamala Harris. I think all Donald Trump has offered is tax breaks for his, buddies who run really large businesses, and a lot of divisiveness. And I think a lot of folks, that include suburban women, but also include many constituencies, right? We talk to everyone, are tired of division, and they really, really want to move forward. They want to feel joy. They want to feel optimistic about America. And I think Kamala Harris is a new generation. She's a new kind of candidate.
Right. Just lastly, what else are you watching for tonight? You have such a pulse on all of this. I'm sure you're watching a lot of metrics.
Yeah, look, I think, early on in the night, we're going to see Kamala Harris doing quite well and Democrats doing very well. The reality is we will see some of the southern states be called early, and those are states that generally will be favorable to Donald Trump. But I think it's likely that we probably won't know the complete result.
Trying to hold an audience here. Audience are jump in and out. What is?
Keep them busy.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, you just noticed. I got it last year.
No, not that. That. Looks like a nationwide card.
Yeah, I thought you'd do that, Dad.
Why them and not me?
It just feels good to bank somewhere that's owned by its members, rather than someone like you.
Missed me.
Because we're owned by our members, we put members first. Nationwide, a good way to bank.
Towards the Republican Party, but particularly after COVID, and particularly generally, as I say, with demographic change, lots of universities expanding and all those sort of things, they are becoming more diverse over time, and generally speaking, trending towards the Democratic Party. And increasingly, we can see with an exceptional ground game, particularly in states like Georgia and Arizona, the Democrats, for the first time in 2020, managed to flip these states blue for the first time in a political generation. Joe Biden flipped Georgia. For the first time a Democrat had carried that state since 1992. Before that, you have to go all the way back to 1976, Jimmy Carter winning it. And in Arizona as well, the first time a Democrat winning since Bill Clinton won it in 1996. If Kamala Harris, the route for either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris is either through all of these, or ideally, as Joe Biden nearly did in 2020, in both. So we will be talking a lot about the Rust Belt, we'll be talking a lot about the Sun Belt, because those are the places where this election is going to be fought and lost.
Lewis, thank you so much. We just want to bring you all up to date because, of course, in about, I believe, 20 minutes' time or so, the first lot of polls were supposed to close, and we were really focused on that key battleground state, Georgia. But we have learned in the last half an hour or so that Georgia will now not close until 7:45. So they will keep some polls open for an extra 45 minutes. They're saying that 10 polling stations have extended their hours due to the disruption from non-credible bomb threats. Well, let's go straight to our correspondent, Cordelia Lynch, who joins us from Atlanta, Georgia. And Cordy, we were expecting those first polls, especially in Georgia. All eyes are on Georgia at the moment because it's that first battleground state.
Georgia, this is a key area for Kamala Harris to try and make gains with black voters. She also needs to make critical gains in the suburbs. We were expecting the polls to close, but there have been some delays. It follows non-credible bomb threats, 5 in fact, in this county alone earlier. We heard from the FBI that they believe that they are connected to Russia in some way. We've heard from the Secretary of State in Georgia who has said that we will not be intimidated. But just in the last few minutes, we are also hearing some reports from DeKalb County as well that polling stations there have been delayed because of further bomb threats. We're awaiting detail on that. And I can speak now to 2 people at a watch party here, desperately awaiting these results, Nikidra and Shanika. Nikidra, what do you make of these reports, of these non-credible and don't know about the latest, but bomb threats. How concerned are you by those?
I think it's very concerning, and it's also sad. But I think the one thing that is, I think, going to pull this all together is the fact that we have somebody, Kamala Harris, who I actually voted for, someone who really cares about the people. And it's unfortunate that we're living in these times where they have to threaten our freedom. Like the right to vote, it should never be threatened, and it's unfortunate. But I think that people are slowly but surely recognizing that this is a very important election, and to really vote your conscience and go with the person that you feel will lead and that you can tell your children about. And we already know who that is.
This was a very contentious state back in 2020. You'll remember Donald Trump famously calling the Secretary of State to find 11,700 more votes that would have plugged the deficit, if you like. It was a state that Joe Biden turned blue after nearly 30 years of being Republican. Do you think there is a chance that any result might in fact just be undermined, not accepted?
So based upon the history of Donald Trump, it wouldn't surprise me that he would try to contest the elections. But I think that people have wisened up and they know that we're not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe anymore. And just to, give your good riddance and, accept the election results. We're tired. We are tired of all the back and forth with him, his rhetoric. It's just too much. And so in the event that it doesn't go the way that he likes, go back to West Palm Beach or wherever his mansion is and just live there. Like, we are tired of it. So move on. It's time to move on and move forward for that matter.
Shanika, I'm interested what you think about the black male vote. A lot has been said this year about Donald Trump chipping away at Kamala Harris's appeal on that front, that some just don't feel the enthusiasm for her, that they believe that Donald Trump is more capable on the economy. Is that something that you're hearing from friends, families, others in the community?
No, I'm active in my sorority, and there's also fraternities that are really backing Kamala Harris. So I did watch a couple of interviews on different media outlets, and I know one in particular said that they feel that that was a myth, and I feel really strongly about that. I really feel that there are a lot of African-American males, they can relate to Kamala Harris. I'm originally from the Bay Area, so I have a lot of similarities. We went to Howard University, same organization, so I just really feel that there are a lot of African-American males that are supporting her. And even when Biden actually endorsed her, the African-American males, they got on for, their meeting and they raised money. So, I just really think that that's just, as he would say, fake news.
We know that there's been record early voter turnout in the state, more than 4 million people voting early. What do you think is motivating them? Because we have abortion certainly the top of Kamala Harris's campaign, the economy big in people's minds too. Just shortly, what do you think's the most important to most people here?
Yeah, I would definitely say healthcare, like the abortions and things of that nature. And, I just really feel that people believe in her vision. When you hear from someone and you know what their platform is, and there's someone that's not really sharing what their platform is and just coming with negative, better, it's just, yeah.
Ladies, thank you very much for speaking with us. Well, we will update you as soon as we hear on those polling stations and when polls might close, but we are expecting at least some delays tonight with concern around the safety and integrity of the vote here in Georgia.
Cordy, thank you so much. So that was our Cordelia Lynch bringing us a bit of an update from Georgia. We also have a bit of developing news that's coming in from North Carolina. We're told that 2 precincts have extended the hours of voting because they're saying they have technical issues in Burke County in the western region and one in Wilson County in East Raleigh. So 2 precincts there have extended their time for voting as well. No doubt there are going to be technical issues as well as security issues across the country.
Yeah, and also news from Pennsylvania that election officials in Pennsylvania with both parties are denying Donald Trump's claims of massive cheating. Election board member there has said there's absolutely no truth to the allegation. It is yet another example of disinformation. So that's from Philadelphia, where Dominic Waghorn, our international affairs editor, is this evening. So
When is that? That's another sneeze.
The last week, or maybe the last weekend, in your view, what did the Trump campaign do right, and what did the Harris campaign do right, and vice versa? What do you think they did wrong?
Well, I think both campaigns really grounded out to the end. They were in a lot of places. They kept hitting these high swing states to to try to secure votes there. I think Donald Trump actually remained somewhat disciplined down the stretch, and Kamala Harris stuck to her message points. I think those are the positives. The negatives are that if you're not a Trump fan or you're not a Harris fan, nothing they said in the last few days will change your mind. Harris didn't really get into specifics through the entire 107 days of her campaign. Donald Trump kept with the same themes that he has talked about: the economy, immigration, these other things, right through to the end. So, in the last 7 days, I was waiting for something to kind of move the needle here a little bit. I didn't really see that.
It is very close, Austin.
Yeah, so Brian, we saw, and I was asking Keith about this earlier, we saw Trump making appearances in New Mexico and in Virginia. We saw Vance in New Hampshire over the weekend. We haven't seen Kamala Harris making any appearances in any of these states that we don't consider battleground states. What do you think they're seeing? What do you think they're relying on?
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut everyone off here or interrupt. We're going to be doing this a lot. We do have some of these live events right now. We have some of these election officials, especially in Georgia. The Secretary of State there, Brad Raffensperger, speaking live. Let's just take it.
Was there. They brought in dogs, and they're doing a sweep there, so we're not concerned about anything like that. The area was fully secure.
How long the delays were?
Typically, what you saw, anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes in that range. So, we'll just be following that precinct by precinct.
How much later will they fail?
Well, that's what we're just saying. If you had, they were doing their work, say 20 minutes to 40 minutes, something like that. I think there's one that might be 50 minutes, but in that range, so less than an hour. But we'll get those to you as soon as we can. And typically, I know that in Atlanta, they also just got a whole bunch of bomb threats come through, and Atlanta Police Department, they're keeping everything open. All the precincts are staying open, and they're just sending dogs around to sweep it to make sure that they're safe. But we know where it's coming from. FBI knows where it's coming from, but we want to make sure, interest of public safety, that everyone, make sure that it doesn't, to slow down anyone from voting. And like I said, if you are in line at 7 p.m., you can still continue to stay in line to exercise your right to vote.
Are they connected, do you know, to threats coming in and
We don't know that. And best as we can tell, these will probably be coming from the same source.
Are there any indications of threats coming into places where the ballots are being counted?
No.
How will the extension of the hours impact of the county?
Just a little bit slower because you have, I think that was 15 precincts plus the 2 in Cobb. It's a total of 15 precincts, so it just extends it out from there. But all those early votes have already been, all the early voting has already been done. There's no reason for that should not be tabulated and uploaded quickly. And then all the other votes for the absentee that have been accepted, so that should come quickly also. Yes.
do you have any frustration seeing some of these threats come in after you guys have done so much over the last 4 years to try to change the election process and make it more secure?
I'm frustrated as an American that people would threaten other Americans, and so or threaten, just to question the safety, and so that's what frustrates me. But we work through it. But our heart goes out for our voters. And that's what our concern is, and our poll workers.
You said early results will be in by 8 p.m., but that's a huge chunk of the total votes. So
Correct.
We're going to see early results in Georgia, 4 million votes by 8 p.m.
Oh, some of the precincts maybe extended a little bit now because they have this situation going on, but that's in 4 counties, 5 counties. So really, then over 150 counties. Yes, by 8 p.m. by state law, they are required when they close on time to have it 1 hour after they close. So yes, you'll get a lot of results really quick. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. We'll be here. I know you will be too.
All right, so Brad Raffensperger wrapping up there. You see his deputy Gabe Sterling there in Atlanta with all of these questions about when we might know results there in Georgia. Polls closed at the top of the next hour here. I'm Andrew Kraft, back out live. I want to just put this tweet up here. This is a really good illustration of what election officials have had to contend with today. Anna Giratelli at the Washington Examiner tweeting out this: 7 new bomb threats received by election officials in DeKalb County outside Atlanta, Georgia, according to county officials. She says polls were supposed to close at 7 o'clock Eastern in about 9 minutes there. In the meantime, we still have Brian Sobel and Austin Westfall with me here in the newsroom. And Brian, election officials, they're trying to preserve the sanctity of the ballot today. They've had to contend with a lot, haven't they?
Yes, and these threats, if sources are correct, are coming not from a domestic source, but coming from perhaps Russia or other countries that are trying to upset the American election. But you saw there that Georgian officials are on top of it, and other than taking normal precautions, it's not stopping anything.
Ryan, I got to ask you, just remind our audience, why did he have to field some questions there about election integrity? Why is that important specifically in his county, in his state?
Well, I think because already you're having the former president, Austin, talking about reports of shenanigans in Philadelphia. I mean, this is these officials trying to get out in front of any of the rhetoric coming from one or more of the campaigns about whether the elections have integrity. We've come a long way in 4 years from 2020. The election system has been bolstered considerably. And so this is kind of, a 2020 playbook page. And people ought to be really, in my view, concentrating on other things tonight.
All right, yeah. And of course, got a reminder, we're not in a pandemic like we were in 2020. That's a major difference and mitigating factor as well. Brian Sobel, thanks so much. Also, we'll check in at the top of the hour. In the meantime, let's take our final commercial break of this hour. We got a lot more in store. Many states' polls are closing in just about 7 minutes' time, and some of those battleground states we're watching, including Georgia and North Carolina. We'll see you in 2 minutes.
nobody's innocent. Nobody.
Buckle up. Here we go.
I'm messing it around. It's on my phone. Getting married?
And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. We're almost at the top of a new hour here. Want to take this live picture there at the White House. You see, just wanted to give you this reporting. President Biden and the First Lady will watch election results tonight in the residence with longtime aides and senior staff, according to a White House official. Also, the First Lady voted in person this morning there in Wilmington, Delaware. In the meantime here, let's stay in Washington right now. Let's go to the campus of Howard University. That is where Vice President Kamala Harris is holding her election night watch party. Our friend Fox News correspondent Connor Hansen is there live. Connor, good to see you. What's the energy like there right now?
Andrew, it's building and building here as the crowd starts to fill up. A lot of the crowd's students, as you can imagine, here at Howard University. We're just minutes away from those first states closing, where we'll get a better look at where this election is heading. Before today, a record 80 million people had already voted. That's more than half the total number of ballots cast in 2020. Now, both campaigns relying on who showed up to vote today.
We, the people, have the power to shape our future.
Coming off a whirlwind day of energizing voters in battleground Pennsylvania, Vice President Kamala Harris is not holding any campaign events today, instead opting to do radio interviews, hoping to win over any more undecided voters.
We are tied. Every vote matters, and so I am working hard all day long, continuously to get out the vote. There are two choices in this race, and it's about the direction of our country, whether we want to go backward or forward.
Harris wants to be the first vice president in 32 years to be promoted to the Oval Office.
I will work on your behalf as President of the United States to lift you up around dealing with, for example, the cost of living, bringing down the cost of groceries, the cost of housing.
As part of that effort, her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, making a final pitch to voters in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
This will be won by 1 or 2 votes per precinct in places like Pennsylvania. This is a time when there's a privilege to live in this country and a responsibility. Get out and vote.
And as you mentioned, Vice President Harris will be here to watch those results come in at her alma mater, Howard University. And she says this will be a full circle moment. This is actually where she first ran for office as freshman class representative. Andrew.
All right, Connor Hansen there live for us on the campus of Howard University. Connor, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, in the meantime here, always appreciate Connor Hans's reports there throughout the course of this election cycle. Remember, though, we are monitoring all things on social media right now. The candidates themselves are out there posting. Let's check in with Live Now's Christina Evans with more on that front here. Christina, what do you got for us?
Yes, Andrew, of course, like I said earlier today, we're here in our social center making sure that we're keeping you up to date as all of these tweets and posts that are happening on X, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok are happening. And here in our social center, one of the things we now want to highlight right now are the posts from the candidates themselves. If you take a look at your screen here, you can see this TikTok was posted from real Donald Trump's page there on the platform, asking voters to stay in line. That same sentiment repeated by Vice President Kamala Harris on X as well, and her running mate as well, Tim Walz, saying just 1 or 2 votes in each precinct could make the difference. If you are in line, make sure that you're staying in line. So that's been the message that's happening across the social platforms right now from the candidates as those hours are now winding down when folks are able to make sure that their voices are heard across the country at those polling locations. Again, we're keeping a close eye on the social stories that are popping up, but again, we're keeping an eye right now those candidates asking folks just to stay in line and vote if you are in line before your polling location closes, Andrew.
All right, Christina, thanks for that check-in. We'll talk soon. In the meantime here, it is a new hour. It is 5 o'clock here in Mountain Time, 7 o'clock there on the East Coast. Polls have now closed in some of these major battleground states like Georgia, like North Carolina. Speaking of Georgia there, we're waiting some type of press conference on some of the threats made to polling locations there. This is in Fulton County. So we'll wait to see if anyone steps up to the podium there as well. We also have a live picture of voters in line. I believe that's in Maricopa County. Polls obviously have not closed yet there in Arizona. In the meantime, though, we are tracking these results coming in as well. We're still waiting on some race calls here, but it is a new hour, and we want to bring into the conversation Officer Westfall yet again with some of those results, and he joins me.
They'll be in the album.
It's been Indiana and Kentucky we've been talking about here, but now these major battleground states, polls now closed there. We'll get results in very soon, right?
We will. We're watching them tabulate results right now in Georgia. We are going to be waiting for any type of result from that key battleground state. That is one of the 7 battlegrounds that we've been tracking so closely. So let's look at our map. We're starting to see it fill in with some colors now. 19 electoral votes on the Trump side so far. 3 coming in for the vice president. Where are those votes coming from? Vermont. That's where Harris is getting her 1 vote so far. As soon as the polls closed, they were feeling comfortable enough to call that one in Harris's favor. Let's take a look at why. And you know what? We're not even getting any official results in, but a safely blue state, Vermont, going to Kamala Harris. Indiana and Kentucky, we already knew, called in Trump's favor. Florida, we're finally getting some results in from the Sunshine State. Now, that is not dark red. It's not been called yet. The Associated Press has not called for Florida. That is 30 electoral votes that are expected to go red. There is an interesting Senate race that we're watching for there. And you know what? While we're talking about the Senate, Andrew, let's pull up our Senate map. We've so far seen 1 Senate race being called in Indiana. So, Indiana, and we will back up here a little bit because Jim Banks, the Associated Press, officially calling the Indiana Senate race in Banks's favor. He has 62% over McRae's 35%. That's only with 12% of the votes tabulated. The AP feeling comfortable enough to call that one in Banks' favor. We didn't expect that one to be a toss-up. Let's focus on one where we did expect somewhat of a competitive race. This is Rick Scott's race. Rick Scott facing off against Debbie Carswell-Powell. This was 19% of the votes already coming in, and that's because Florida is one of those states that can tabulate votes before the polls close. So as soon as the polls closed, a big batch of ballots came through. In fact, 19% of everything counted has already come in, giving us about 1/5 of the information we know before all of the votes are tallied. And so far, Rick Scott has just over 50% of the vote. Right now, it looks like Scott is up by roughly 4 points. The Democrats, they're going to need to win some of these competitive seats in states like Florida, Texas. There's even an independent running in Nebraska. The Democrats are on the defense when it comes to the Senate, Andrew. Florida is one of those key races that they're hoping to win.
That's right. We do have some of the head-to-head here with the results from the Associated Press there. Republican Rick Scott over his Democratic challenger, Debbie McCarcel-Powell. 51-47, still very early for this race there. But also, like you said, we do have some of these race calls for the presidential contest. Let's get those out of the way here. Indiana, the Hoosier state, has now been called for former President Donald Trump there, with around 14% of estimated votes counted, 11 electoral votes, like you said, Austin, going to Donald Trump from Indiana as well. Also, Kentucky, the bluegrass state, this is in Trump's column there. They have AP calling Kentucky for Donald Trump. Trump gets 8 electoral votes there in Kentucky, and you see the vote differential, the vote margin there between he and Harris. So this is to be expected with, Indiana and Kentucky here. If we can put up the results as well, you mentioned the Indiana Senate race between Jim Banks, the congressman right now, and his challenger as well, the Democrat, that race being called for Banks. So this seat, Austin, remains in Republican hands here. Jim Banks beating Valerie McRae there. He stays on Capitol Hill, but he moves over to the other chamber there, the upper chamber. So just wanted to kind of give everyone the run through for some of these states. Like you said, we have the head-to-head matchup, Austin. Vermont, this goes to Harris, 3 electoral votes in Harris's column for Vermont there. So we are just getting started. We're in a new hour, and yes.
If we can come out to the map one more time, because there's going to be an odd color on the senatorial map. I just want to make sure everybody understands what we're looking at, because you're used to seeing reds and blues on these maps. The reason why you're seeing yellow in Vermont is simply because Senator Sanders is an independent. So Sanders there, they're able to call this one as soon as the polls are closed. We don't even see any of the numbers coming in for this race yet, but Senator Sanders with a healthy lead, a healthy advantage in order to get another 6-year Senate term, Andrew.
All right, and we do have live pictures there at the White House. Also, polls closing this hour in 13 states, like we said there in North Carolina and Georgia. The prize for the White House is on. We're monitoring some of these early results in as well. Let's bring into the conversation some more of our analysts, experts, and reporters, including Riley Rogerson there at Notice. She joins me. Riley, results coming in quite fast here, but at the top of the hour, these states, so many people are watching. Georgia, North Carolina. Georgia has 16 electoral votes. North Carolina, 16 as well here. We're going to get results in those battleground states. What are you watching for right now?
Definitely North Carolina, definitely Georgia. Later in the night, absolutely Pennsylvania, which has a really important Senate race as well. Nevada, Arizona. I'm sure I'm missing some swing states there, but I'm watching the same states the rest of the country is watching, which are all supposed to be nail biters, and we'll see when we get results.
Yeah, and Riley, I wanted to ask too, other things that you've been watching for. I've been watching for enthusiasm, turnout, some of the same day voter turnout. It seems like the Harris and Trump camps are really contending with the early vote numbers and the same day voting numbers and the by mail numbers here. So it's all going to be a numbers game, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. This is all a numbers game. You see already the Trump camp is clearly paying very close attention in Philadelphia. The Harris camp as well has been projecting a lot of optimism about what they're seeing is good turnout in a very blue stronghold, which they hope will counteract where Trump is doing better in kind of the middle of the state and some of the suburban counties. So, the numbers are everything, and it's just a matter of which counties really turn out for, Trump or Harris.
Yeah, Wiley, I know that you cover Capitol Hill so much in your everyday life when we don't have an election night to cover. But will we know who has control of the House and or Senate by the end of the night or not?
I mean, that's a great question that I still don't know the answer to. I promise you my newsroom would love to know. The House, I think, could really be a while. I had a conversation with the DCCC chairwoman, Susan Delbene, last week. She reminded me that the House was decided in 5 races by about 6,500 votes last time. So some of these races are going to be incredibly close. It's going to take a really long time to kind of parse them out. There might be recounts in some cases. So the House, I think, could be on the scale of weeks before we have a solid answer. The Senate, I think, will be maybe a little bit sooner, but we will see. Montana's important, and that's not going to come in until late tonight.
We've been hearing so much about how it's more likely than not that the Republicans will flip control of the Senate. But I wanted to ask you a couple questions about which states are in play for the Democrats to actually pick up seats.
Yes, there are two big pickup opportunities that Democrats have invested a lot of resources into. That's Florida and that's Texas. We'll see. It's an uphill climb for the Democrats there. In Florida, the incumbent is Rick Scott. In Texas, the incumbent is Ted Cruz. These are two conservative senators that Democrats would be eager to flip their seats. But we still don't know. It is an uphill climb in two states that are, Trump is counting on to be Republican for him. So these two incumbents, I think, are hoping that they will also be able to keep their seats there.
Yeah, and Riley and also we do have results coming in the Florida Senate race there. Scott up over his challenger, the Democrat Debbie Mucarsel-Powell. I guess going into this race specifically, Riley, did Senate Republicans expect such a fight there for Scott in Florida, or were they thrown for a loop in that one?
Actually, the past few times that Rick Scott has run statewide, remember he was previously the governor of Florida as well, have been real nail biters. His popularity is not super high in the state. However, he has a massive war chest. He's a very independently wealthy and has put a lot of his own resources into funding his race there. So I think that this is to be expected, that it was going to be pretty close. It's always been close for Rick Scott, but that doesn't mean just yet that the Democrats are feeling great about taking it. We'll have to see as more votes come in.
Let's focus our efforts just on Georgia briefly here, because we have our live picture inside this county location in Fulton County at the moment. We are getting results in Austin and Riley from Georgia on the presidential level here. Let's take that. All right, so Georgia with 16 electoral votes here. And I can't exactly tell how many of the votes have been counted.
Looks like 1,500 for Trump, 1,200 for Harris.
All right, so you see Trump there over Harris. So it's still early. What do we make, Austin, of these results here?
Yeah, so this is a very small batch of results that have come in. 1,500 looks like for Trump so far, 1,200 for Harris. Polls closing about 11 minutes ago in the Peach State. We're not expecting to get any bellwethers, and I think we just saw the results possibly update there. And what I'll do is I'll pull up the race, because we can, and there it is. So yeah, we're getting, okay, so we're seeing now 78,000 votes for Harris versus 63,000 votes for Trump. So we're getting in a little bit more context as to how people are leaning. We don't know exactly where these votes are coming from, but we do know that Harris so far, with only 3% of the votes tabulated, Harris has a 10-point advantage over Trump.
Yeah, and of course, also to your point, it is still early. But Riley, if you can, give us a sense. How much did the campaigns, the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign, prioritize Georgia just in the last few weeks?
Oh, it's definitely been prioritized. Both campaigns have made trips down there. Georgia, alongside these other swing states that we're watching, has been the subject of a lot of investment by both campaigns, a lot of television ads, and a lot of rallies. So both campaigns are taking their chances here very, very seriously, and we'll see how it takes out later tonight.
Yeah, and Riley, of course, we know that Donald Trump lost Georgia in 2020 by comparably a pretty small margin, more than 11,000 votes here. Is it going to be that close again? What are some of these trends in the state that have shifted at all since 2020? Maybe none.
Yeah, there's been a big question of whether Black voters will turn out to the same degree for Kamala Harris as they did for Joe Biden. That was a big part of his winning coalition back in 2020. So I think there's a big question now of if there will still be those strong numbers there for Harris. Obviously, Donald Trump's an opening there, or he would not have invested quite so many resources into the state. But yeah, I think that's a big demographic that people will be watching there for sure.
Yeah, so can you give us context into how we watch these states, these battleground states, over time? What I'm going to put up behind me here, and Andrew, if you can take my screen in full, I want to show. So this is our breakdown of the counties. So, and these are very preliminary results. We will say that up front. But we're starting to see a blue dot in Douglas County. It looks like Harris has a 32-point lead over Trump right now. Can you just lay out how this works? Typically, we see in these major metro areas, that's where Democrats run up the numbers. And then there's several rural counties where Trump runs up the numbers. Correct?
Yes, that's the case. That'll be the case in Georgia. It will also be similar in Pennsylvania. I talked already about the importance of Philadelphia, but also Pittsburgh. And you'll see the same in Michigan with Detroit, in Wisconsin with Milwaukee. That's typically how this is going to go. So it's really a question of turnout in these big blue cities for the Democrats.
We know that the Harris camp is really relying on turnout, like you said, in Philadelphia. What about Metro Atlanta? Help us make sense of the complexion there. Yes, it's usually solidly blue, but are there any red or purple shades in Metro Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is really the question. And again, like I brought up, there's a question of where the black vote and black voters are trending in Atlanta, in these, urban areas, in these swing states. So, I think that there is a question. There's also a question of whether there's a, hidden Trump vote, a hidden Harris vote. But again, I think there's a lot more questions here than answers about how these cities are going to break down.
And I'll just mention that there is something that we're kind of watching. There's this really coalition of 9 counties that we talk about when we're looking at an area like the Atlanta Metro. There's 9 solidly blue